the Alden V-tip boot in brown calfskin. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Dale, Dale's Leatherworks, and in today's video I'm very excited to finally be getting back to my roots, back to the roots of this channel, which all started with my review of the Alden Indy boots. So this is the first pair of Aldens I'm going to be reviewing in a while. These were sent to me by my buddy Eli to review. He bought these. This was an original J. Crew run. They're no longer for sale, and I actually stopped looking at what J. Crew offers in terms of Alden just because the prices are starting at $700 now, and it's just outside my price range for me personally. But I always love Alden. I always respect Alden, and especially their approach. They're a very successful, resilient American heritage shoe company, and on this channel we're all about supporting heritage makers. So years ago, when my shoe collection was mostly Alden, I still have probably 15-20 pairs of Alden, but those were sort of the golden days of my channel, just buying boots and talking about them. And but as social media goes, things grow, things happen, you make connections, you make friends, and then things go in all kind of directions, unpredictable, but it's a great fun time, wild ride for sure. So Alden, first time I'm talking about Alden in such a long time. This is crazy. Go follow my buddy Eli at the Heritage Tribute. He's a super cool guy, has an amazing boot collection, and he lives in Panama. Absolutely picturesque city of Panama City. Beautiful. Hoping to be able to get down there one of these days. But let's talk about V-tips for a second. So I've noticed recently on Instagram, I'm seeing a lot of Alden shops. They're selling V-tips and they're also selling U-tips. This is a new emergence. This is a new phenomenon. I was not in the Alden game when these V-tips and U-tips started coming into prominence. But now they've become very popularized, I'll say. And several shops sell them. So the Shoe Mart has the Alden men's Algonquin V-tip boot in color H shell for $956. Almost completely sold out. See, I'm glad that, despite all the drama that happened, a couple years ago by this point, Alden still has its loyalists and they're still doing great. I'd like to see that. The Armory sells a suede Algonquin V-tip blucher in snuff suede. Most of their sizes are sold out. So here's what the Armory has to say about the V-tip. They say it's their take on the Alden Ranger mock. It says, this is part of our daywear footwear range. This comfortable blucher in snuff suede features great arch support on an oiled leather sole. The hand-sewn moccasin toe stitching is paired with Alden's signature V-tip, and make this a wear-it-with-anything shoe to throw on during the weekend. And just for old time's sake, I'll read the history behind Alden. Alden traced their history back to 1884 when Charles H. Alden established the company in Middleborough, Massachusetts. They're now widely considered to be the name in American shoemaking with an extensive range of style, fits, and materials on offer. I see Gentleman's Footwear also sells the Alden Algonquin V-tip boots in color H shell, $993. AldenShop.com sells an Algonquin V-tip boot in black calf. And you might be thinking, what the heck does Algonquin mean? Well, I'm always interested in word etymologies, as I am a bit of a nerd myself. Algonquin can refer to the Algonquin people, a group of indigenous peoples traditionally living in the Ottawa River Valley in Canada, or the Algonquian language family, which includes the Algonquin language and related languages. They traditionally lived in the Ottawa River Valley and its tributaries in western Quebec and Ontario, Canada. They're part of the larger Anishinaabe cultural group, which includes the Ojibwe and Odawa. They speak the Algonquin language, also known as Anishinaabe or, okay, I'm not making this up. This is really what it's called. Omamiwininimoan. Wow. They lived in semi-permanent longhouse villages during the summer and dispersed across the landscape to hunt during the winter. The term Algonquin has been suggested to derive from the Maliset word Elakomquik, meaning they are our relatives or allies. So super cool etymology there, but I'm gonna have to call cultural appropriation on that one, guys. We can't be naming an American boot after the Algonquin people, can we? So much toxic masculinity floating around here. I need to pop a Zen. I need that nicotine fix. The Alden V-tip. This is on the very last. One of the models that I spoke about is actually on the Alden 379X last, otherwise known as the military last, which is a little bit more rounded out. And I've talked about this in the past, but yeah, these are sharp. They've got the Alden mini lug commando outsoles, classic Alden sleek silhouette. Looks very much like an Indy boot. We've got brass eyelets all the way up. Beautiful contrast against that nice woodsy, warm brick brown on the calfskin uppers. So it's 5 3/4 ounces thick. That's actually on the tongue. On the upper, it's 8 ounces thick. Okay, 7.5 ounces. Beautiful finished edges. A floating tongue, I call it, because oftentimes with Alden shoes, the tongue shifts, and I could already tell this one's it's pulling to the left. Yeah, a nice collapsible toe there. And you know, these boots, they're made for easy walking. You know, these aren't something that you'll have to break in. These boots, it's lined with glove leather lining. Here's a boot I haven't pulled out in quite some time. These are my Alden Innsbruck Indies in brown Chrome Excel. Quite a bit of bloom on there. Alden Indy V-tip. You can see the difference here. So on the Indy, the Alden Indy, we've got what's called a cosmetic stitch moc-toe, which is purely, so that basically this boot is a plain toe boot. The vamp is all one piece. They simply stitch a moc-toe into it for cosmetic purposes only. If you contrast that to a more traditional moc-toe like these are Imperium boots in buck brown harness, Wickett Craig buck brown. You see that this panel, you see the raw edge here. There's 2 raw edges. This panel is separate from this panel down here, meaning this is a real moc-toe. The mock is joined together by this stitch. So you have 2 pieces of leather right here. The Alden Indy is not that. This is all one piece. This is just for looks. Now the V-tip is not that. The V-tip is actually 3 separate pieces. So we have what's called the apron here. The apron is cut into a V-tipped pattern. That's stitched down, and we have 2 pieces to the vamp. We've got a split toe here, which makes these 2 different sides of the vamp different pieces. And so they're all joined together in a V-tip configuration. Very stylish. I don't have anything like that. The closest thing I have to that are going to be my Alden tanker boots in navy chrome Excel. These are otherwise known as Norwegian split toe. But again, this is all one piece. This is a hand sewn mock, and it's all one piece. So wow, I'm talking about some old classics on this channel today. But I still have them. I'll never get rid of these or these. I love the Alden Indy. It's just got a special place in my heart. So yeah, so the V-tip is going to be a modern iteration of the Indy boot. To me, it's basically an Indy boot, except the last is different. Very Last versus True Balance. But the V-tip is just getting a little bit more experimental with the pattern, you know. And then the U-tip is a completely different thing. The Alden U-tip is basically an Alden Indy. From what I could tell, the the mock stitching is just, I don't know, a little closer down to the edges. I actually don't know the difference. I heard it once. My buddy Matt Gray at Ealdwine Raleigh sells a U-tip. Yeah, they do the U-tip in Chukka boots as well. So on Reddit, oh, I hate Reddit. On Reddit, somebody asked, what's the difference between the Indy and the U-tip? Are there any differences other than the last as far as styling or details go? I can't tell by looking at them. Turns out the U-tip, as its nomenclature suggests, means the raised stitching around the toe is U-shaped and therefore more rounded, whereas on the Indy boots, The raised stitching is more squared off towards the tip. I believe the prerequisite to be considered an Indy boot is it has to be on the true balance last. Okay, so that absolutely doesn't clear anything up for me, so I'm still confused. Hey guys, editing me is back, and embarrassingly, I finally now see what the Reddit guy was talking about. He said it well when he said the raised stitching, which I would call the hand-stitched mock, in which there's a raised protrusion of leather rising above the surface level of the vamp. So he nailed it when he said raised stitching, but I know that traditionally as a hand sewn moccasin, whereas on the Indy boot it's not hand sewn. There is no raised leather above the vamp surface. It's all flat. They literally just run cosmetic stitches through the vamp. That's an Indy boot. It's really simple. U-tip has a raised surface, which indicates a hand-stitched mock, and the Indy boot has a flat surface indicating a machine-stitched cosmetic mock. It's very simple when you just look at the pictures. I've been overcomplicating it this whole time, so I hope this clears it up. All right, bad news, guys. In fact, no, scratch that. Horrible news. Everything I just said in that last edit is mostly wrong. There are iterations of the Indy boot, and I've seen this before, with the hand-sewn mock as well. So the hand-sewn mock doesn't specifically designate an Alden moc-toe as a U-tip. What I think they adopted, at least what I think what the convention became within the last few years, is that the shape of the mock itself is what dictates an Indy versus a U-tip. As you can see in recent Indy iterations, it almost has a 90-degree turn in some cases, though that's not always the case. Sometimes the mock stitch is, a little bit more boxy. Sometimes, though, it is perfectly rounded like a U. So it's getting complicated. I'm getting a headache. This one that I'm showing right now in brown suede is perfectly U-shaped, but they call it an Indy. And then complicating things further, I just saw an Indy boot without a moc-toe at all. So I'm more confused than ever. If you could help me out in the comments to make sense of this U-tip versus Indy boot delineation, please let me know, because I've given up all hope. And if you're gonna say something to the effect of, well, the Indy boot is built on the true balance last, that's also not true. I found iterations of the Indy boot built on the Alden Plaza last and on the Barry last. So the last doesn't seem to have much to do with it. What I think is just going on is I think these shop owners are just having fun. They're creating their own models, they're creating their own makeups, they're giving them creative names. Some of them are following the traditions of Alden that was set before us decades prior, and some of them are just creating new things. And maybe we don't need to overcomplicate it after all. I think it's just guys with shops having fun, being creative. That's where I'm gonna leave it. Again, if I got anything wrong, which I know I did, let me know. Anyways, I'm going to ship these bad boys off to my buddy Eli. Quick, simple review today. I always love talking about Alden, and my favorite Alden shop is Matt Gray's Ealdwine Raleigh. He's really the only Alden shop that I subscribe to his newsletter. He's always got just tempting drops coming out down the pike. And so if you're going to support any Alden shop, I'm a little biased, but I like my buddy Matt Gray down at Ealdwine Raleigh. He does such a good job. He's got such an acumen for picking good Alden runs, and I will leave a link to his shop in the description below. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, guys. Be careful not to commit any cultural appropriations today. That would be just an unforgivable sin. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see y'all in my next video.